yesterday we went over answering a bunch of questions, and after answering these questions, you figured out what your natural tendency is and how you view the world based on how you answered certain questions. We went over things like how do you energize, how do you take in information, how do you evaluate that information, how do you view time, how do you know you've done a good job, how do you learn, and how do you follow procedures. So these were, and then how do you view different things or the same things as well, how do you compare things. So to give you kind of the short of everything, after we did all this, I mean, you can do this right now, you can follow along if you haven't done it yet. If you take in, let's start with the E and I at the top. E and I stands for extrovert and introvert. If you gain energy and you energize by talking to people, there's a lot of other ways to tell as well. Or if you energize when you're alone, you can tell the difference of this. If you, when you're completely drained, if you walk out, I have to just like talk on the phone for like 20 minutes, and that recharges you, then you're truly an extrovert. If you need to be alone, if you get peopled out, what people say, where you're like, I've been talking all day, I need to kind of be alone for a little while, then your natural tendency is to be an introvert. So circle which one you believe you are. There are a lot of other ways to tell too, but the important thing is to recognize that there are tendencies that you're going to have. So again, this is just a recap. If you don't know your type, it's going to be very hard to move forward with the curriculum and the material, so please pay attention to this exercise. The next is how do you take in information. There's the difference between an intuitive and a sensor is that an intuitive person will describe general concepts. Like if I had to tell you ask you what situation you're in right now without going through the entire exercise, some of you would think naturally, oh, I'm at an event, I'm in New York, I am here with a bunch of people, we're learning whatever. That's an intuitive response. You probably never thought about this at all because it does not, you think that everyone thinks this way, but they don't. So, and the rest of the people will think, I'm in a chair, I'm in a room, I have a pen, very sensory things. I'm looking at Josh, I'm listening to talking. Concepts that are very sensory organized. Those are S's. So if you're intuitive and you think of broad concepts, then you're an N. And if you are sensory and you're about physical sensation or listening or anything that has to do with the five senses, then you're an S type. The difference in communication between an N and an S is drastically different. And this comes into play when we start to communicate with other people. 75% of the population is sensory type, and I'm an intuitive, so it's interesting to know that. And again, can I get raise hands, everyone who's intuitive in the room? Like the vast majority of people in this room are, which is far outweighed the natural habitat, you know? Which is why it's easy for me to talk to you guys. If it was a room full of sensors, it would be the hardest thing for me in the universe to talk to everybody, because everyone would be like, what do you mean? And I would get more vague, which is what I do. We went over that yesterday. The concept is that intuitors, for some reason, when someone asks us to be more specific, we accidentally get more vague. Like, we talked about Betsy the cow yesterday. So I was like, oh, do you know who Betsy the cow is? And then an intuitor would say, well, Betsy the cow is a cow. And you'd be like, well, what's a cow? And then you'd go, an animal with 4 legs. And it gets like more and more vague, and that's what intuitors do. That's one of our traps. So what we have to do when we're talking to everybody else is we have to, if we can, take out a picture of Betsy the cow and go, that's Betsy the cow. For sensors. So that across the board will help you. That's a really important communication technique. The next is how do you evaluate? Do you evaluate through your thought process or through your emotions first? T is thinking, F is feeler, or thinker and feeler. If you process through your emotions first, you'll have a much stronger intuition, as in you go with your gut feeling a whole lot. If you process through your through thinking, then sometimes you'll get in your head a lot as well. But you process everything more logically. Everyone in this room is going to want to say thinker, but the majority of people in this room probably aren't thinkers. They're probably feelers. And I was talking about yesterday how it's really hard to tell whether or not you're a thinker or feeler and write it down, because thinkers are going to overthink it, and feelers are going to feel like they feel better if they were thinkers. So it's like, we always write down the opposite of what we really are, but just don't worry about that for right now, because it's not that important. Next is, how do you view time? How do you view time? The easiest way to realize this is to say, are you always early or on time for things, or are you typically late for things? Do you find it really difficult to be on time, or you find it very easy to be on time? If you find it very difficult to be on time, you're a perceiver, you're a P. If you find it easy to be on time and you're always on time or early, then you are a judger, you're J. This is very, very, very important, especially when it comes to interacting with women. Perceivers take in information constantly and they don't make decisions on things, on their surroundings. Judgers make decisions and then it's really hard to change their minds. That's really important when it comes to building rapport. It's important when it comes to building attraction. And I went over that yesterday and I'll review that again in a bit. Okay, the next question is, how do you know if you've done a good job? There's two ways of thinking about this. Again, be as honest as possible with this process. If you're any kind of, if your ego gets in the way of you writing down the true answer, then you will not benefit from this, I swear to God. It will not help you. You're going to walk out with very little value compared to how much you could have gotten if you were completely honest. So, and I know that so far everyone's been trying to push you into a box of, you have to do this thing, you have to do this thing, you have to go approach, you have to build up these strengths, but that's not necessarily the case, and I'll tell you why in a bit. And not to say that isn't good, it's very good to do that, obviously. And if it's a weakness of yours, after you built up your strength and you work in your weakness, then it's very important, it's a really good thing to do. But I'll get into that in a bit. If you realize you've done a good job whenever you get feedback and someone says, that's great, it's a good job, then you have an external frame to the bottom. If you think you've done a good job on your own just by looking at it, and if everyone else says that's shitty, and you go, no, it's not, and you just don't, for some reason you don't believe them, you have an internal frame. That's very important as well. I have an external frame, and therefore I'm much better at creating rapport, but I'm weaker naturally at plowing through things, plowing through resistance. If I had an internal frame, I'd be really good at plowing through resistance and building attraction, except when I got to rapport, I wouldn't be able to connect very well because I have an internal frame and I wouldn't be looking to see how she's reacting to what I do. So there are benefits and there are deficits for each one. But knowing which one you are is going to show your natural strength in that area. So finally, there's two more. I asked yesterday for you guys to compare these two markers. If you look at these two markers and you say, one is black, one is green, one's in your left hand, one's in your right hand, one's held a little bit higher than the other, and that's how you think, you're a difference person. You're a difference person. If you think in your head, they're both markers, they both have caps on, you're holding them both. If you say both for a lot of things, how they're the same, you're a sameness person. This is very important too. This means that whenever you walk out and you start looking at women, if you're a sameness person, you look at all women as being similar to each other, and so you don't get in your head as much. When you walk out, you don't get so nervous, you don't get as nervous, nearly as nervous, as someone who's a different person who sees everybody as individual. But again, when it comes time for rapport, if you're a sameness person, you're going to see her as the same as everybody else, and it's going to be harder for you to find, naturally, harder for you to find those qualities that make her special. So, I'm a difference person, personally. Sameness people, breaking this down, by the way, will allow you to work on one thing at a time. Work on just being an extrovert or work on just being an introvert, which definitely has benefits. Work on just being a thinker, just feeler, things like that. And when you chunk it down like this, it's not like, hey, be good with women, which is impossible. You can take it down in sections, and you can say, well, look, these are the areas that are conducive, that I already have strengths in for going out and approaching. These are the areas in which I lack. If I want to go approach, I just work on these 2 or 3 areas, and then I'm good. And it will work, and you can test it. I have. It does work. So, finally, you have the OPPR section. This is options and procedure. An options person is somebody who creates processes for everything, but they cannot follow a process unless they change it. I'm an options person. For some reason, I can't follow a process by itself. If you give me instructions to do something, I have to skip a step or do something on my own or figure it out on my own. I cannot just sit there and follow the instructions like I'm supposed to. Even though I know the system works out. Like putting together IKEA furniture is like classic. I don't want to look at it. It's like really painful for me to look at this instructions and go, I just don't want to do it. I'll even close it for a little while when I think I've gotten it and skip ahead just so I feel like I've made it my own process. Seriously. And there'll be a couple bolts left over. And I'm like, okay, well, these probably were extra bolts. If you're a procedures person, you need a procedure. Or you don't feel like, well, I feel like I need a procedure too, definitely for things I can't do. But you can follow a procedure. And if you don't have a procedure, you will search for the right procedure until you find it. You won't make one up. So if you're a procedure person, circle the PR. If you are an options person, circle the OP. The great thing about this class is that you guys are mostly intuitors, and I'm an intuitor as well. So I'm not going to have to tell you to do things specifically like circle this or circle this, because you're probably naturally going to do it. Even sensors sometimes will do that when they start catching on as well. But let me know if if I don't tell you to do something and you get confused, just raise your hand. How many sensors do we have again? Raise your hand. 1, 2. Okay, you're right in front. So I can tell if you're looking confused. Okay, so after I did that and we typed everybody, I went through this process. This process, I may be able to give you guys handouts again. Here they are. One for you, one for you, and 2 more to go to the back. Kevin, I'll hand this to you. It's hard to see this because there's stuff written behind it now. It wasn't before. But this process, I put perceivers on one side, and I put judges on the other side of this process. And then I put difference people up top and sameness people at the bottom. And just with these 2 qualities from your massive list of things that you just typed yourself, you're going to figure out what your natural strength is when it comes to meeting women. These are very important concepts. Perceivers take in information very quickly, and they calibrate very quickly. Judgers like to know a situation very well, but once they know it, they own the situation. Difference people look at how everybody's different, so they learn lessons very quickly. Sameness people look at how everybody's the same, so they see major patterns very easily in people. I also don't get too individually involved in people very, very easily. So how many difference perceivers do we have in the room? Raise your hand. If you're a perceiver and you're a difference person, you are a super learner. You're the ideal sort of traditional go out and meet a girl in a bar, especially if you're an extrovert. If you're an introvert, it's a little bit different. But you're the ideal type for go out and meet a girl in a bar. It's going to be very natural for you to see some of the processes, especially if you are a procedure person and you can follow instructions. Though you probably won't be very good at it because you're a perceiver. So it probably won't matter that much to you. But if you had something to do when you go out, then you will see that you learn very quickly. The difference perceivers are target hunters. They want to go hunt for somebody because they can see the difference in everybody. Oh, sorry, because they're perceivers. They want to go hunt. And the reason why is because, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I'm getting a little confused. If you take in information very quickly, then you can calibrate very quickly, like I was saying. So if you can calibrate very, very quickly, then you're naturally going to be good at high impact, very quick environments. And they're targets because they can see the difference in people. They can go, she's different than she is, and I'm her type, or I'm not her type. And so they can target people very easily. Which is very difficult with someone who's a sameness person. How many sameness people do we have? 1, 2 sameness people. That's really interesting. Huh. Okay. Sameness people need to see broad patterns. They have a different strategy altogether. So, super learners. You take in information very quickly because you are a perceiver, and you see the difference in everybody, and therefore you pick up on things very fast. We have a lot of super learners in the class, which is great because I'm a super learner and that's how I talk. Not because it's right or wrong, just because that's how I speak. So I can relax a little bit. Target gatherers are super connectors. If you're a difference and judger, are there difference judgers here? 1, 2. Difference judgers are super connectors. You can see the difference in everybody else, and so everyone's unique to you. But you can follow a system and you want to be in a place where you're comfortable. That's a judger trait. So because of that, you're going to be really good at connecting with people. You can see the difference and you're comfortable. That's a perfect environment for connecting, for building rapport. I don't know if you do that a lot. If you have an external frame, you'll be even better at it, obviously. And if you're an extrovert or an introvert, actually it doesn't really matter here because you can talk to one person too, so it doesn't really drain you that much. Perceivers, sameness perceivers, raise your hand. Nobody. Great, that's interesting. Sameness judgers, I mean. 1, 2, 3. Sameness judgers are super framers. They need to be in a comfortable environment and they see everybody as being the same, find the similar patterns in people. So they're not emotionally invested in people as much, so they're not affected so much by people framing them. So if someone tries to basically these are people who can plow very easily, especially if you have an internal frame. You can plow very easily past a lot of resistance. Judgers like to be in some place that's very comfortable. Like I said, same as people see everyone's being the same. So because you're comfortable, you're going to feel like you own your environment, and because you see everyone's being the same or similar in large broad stroke patterns, you're going to be very good at not being so emotionally invested, and so you'll be able to frame things and have people live into your reality. And so you may not see this coming out naturally, because you probably haven't cultivated it very much if you haven't seen it, but if you do a little bit of work or spend a little bit of time working on your strength instead of your weakness, you'll find that you have a natural affinity for it, which is really easy for you. And I'll move on in a second how that works out, why these things are errors like this. The sameness perceivers, and this is one that had nobody. Sameness perceivers are super skilled. They see the patterns, but they see them very quickly. And so they get very good at handling certain skills that start out in an interaction, particularly attraction. And these are numbers hunters. So if you're a numbers person, then you need to meet a lot of people because you're a sameness person. You need to meet a lot of women. If you want to learn a lesson or you want to get better, you have to just approach if you want to approach or throw parties. Whatever you can do to get a lot of people, a lot of women within your range is good for you because you'll be able to see more patterns that way. And difference people, the targets, are better at going out and seeing the difference in people. Specifically going out and you don't need as many people to learn, as many trials to learn, but they also have their downfall as well. So, now we're going to talk about the weakness for each one of these. The people who are the super learners in the house, their weakness is framing. The weakness is framing. Especially if you have an external frame. The weakness is framing. And the reason why is because you're not a judger, so you don't really trust what's coming in all the time. You never really feel settled or comfortable. And if you do feel settled and comfortable, usually you don't want to screw it up or like try to meet women there in that environment. And you're not a sameness person. You don't typically look at how everyone's the same. Now, you can be in the middle of some of these, so keep that in mind. If you feel like maybe you do both all the time, but usually one wins out. Sameness people, or if you're not a sameness person, then it's hard for you to see major patterns till later on. Hard for you to see major patterns. So each one of these, the opposite of where you are is your weakness. The thing that you really should be working on once your strength is cultivated. Judgers end up falling into a structured sort of pickup artist trap, where they need a structure for everything, always. They need to follow a system. And they get really wrapped up in the system they're following. Even though it's not necessarily going to be helping them, they still do it because they don't know what else to do. And that's your natural tendency. If you're a judger, you may have found yourself doing that naturally. Of course, you want to work on your weakness, but you also want to cultivate it. That's your strength, then cultivate your strength and use a system. But if you already got that down and you're pretty successful with that, switch over and try to start calibrating in time. Start trying to be more of a natural, which is what perceivers are. They're more aloof. They don't really know what they're doing usually. They're just like, I don't know, it works, so I just do that thing. You start talking to them, you can realize really quickly that they have no idea what they're talking about, but they know exactly what they're doing. This is a really good way to put it, really. I am definitely a perceiver, and I had to learn a system in order to be able to explain this to people. Let's wrap this up here. So I'm going to tell you something that it's probably going to make a whole lot of sense here. No, everything else didn't make any sense. This will. Who's a judger? Raise your hand. All right. How many judges in the house look at naturals and go, wow, you guys are awesome? Raise your hand. Just a couple? A few? Almost all of them. Judgers fall into this trap. Perceivers fall into this trap. Judgers get too structured. Naturals are too aloof. They don't know what they're doing. Perceivers need a structure in order to grow. They need a structure. If you're a perceiver, you need a structure. You have to have something that you do in order to grow. Judgers need to let go of their structure and take in information in the moment in order to learn how to grow. If you're a judger and you've been trying to structure for like ever, stop. Especially if you like hit a glass ceiling with it. If you're a perceiver and you've been like doing whatever you want to out there, it's been working, quit. Create a structure around it and then try to do the same thing every time to grow. That's very important. I'm not in this world because I'm a perceiver. But I had to learn a structure in order to understand this world. If you're a judger, you probably started out in this world. But you need to move over here. Otherwise, this world will own you. It'll own you because you won't be able to live outside the structure. You'll be a machine. You'll have what's called a PUA bubble. Where you're like, everything is a system to me. Now I am in comfort.
So if you naturally need to learn how to become a PUA.
You do. You need to have a structure. Now, if you're a procedure person, create your own structure, please. Sorry, an options person, create your own structure. If you're a procedure person, find a structure that best fits your personality type. Especially if your goal is to be good with women. If that's your goal, is to be good with women, then play to your strength. Definitely. If your goal is to be good with women, then and you're a perceiver, be an awesome natural. Just like, don't even worry about structures at all. Just keep doing stuff forever, and you'll figure it out. But do a whole bunch of it. Same thing with a judger. If you want to play to your strength here, then have a structure for everything. Always bring them back to your place, where you have like doodads and whistles. Things that spin around in circles. Check this out. It'll do that every time you pull it. Wow. That's really amazing. So, if you want to strengthen your weakness, though, and you're natural, study a structure. I'm not saying be a PUA, really. I was just kidding about that. But I don't think anyone should really be a pickup artist. But I do think that having a structure around what you do is very valuable if you're a perceiver. Again, if you are very structured already, and you're like, I do this, then I do this, then I do this, and then depending on if this works, I continue, and then I guess. Or I just stop. If that's how it is, you have to pry your system's manual out of your hands and let it go, and just walk out there and feel and perceive in the moment. If you can do that, then you can learn how to strengthen your weakness, which I think is kind of cool. Maybe I'm the only one. Okay, so here's a goal for each of the different types for when you go out. One way that you know that you can improve yourself based on your type. If you are a target hunter, super learners, here's a key. Do not choose who you're attracted to at all until you find yourself building rapport with somebody. Don't choose a girl at all. Just talk to everybody. Until all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm really clicking with this girl. I'm really clicking with this girl should be your indicator that you like her. Not she's hot. And other guys are digging her. And my friends are totally going to think this is awesome. But that is pretty cool, though. I do think it's awesome. But make sure you don't choose your target, your goal, the person that you are attracted to, until you start connecting with her. Change in your mind what it means to be attracted to somebody. Change it to when you connect, when you're really clicking. When you start doing this, you'll have a lot of success really fast. Really, really, really fast. Because you're a super learner. That's what you do. But if you're looking at success as building attraction, or going in and finding somebody and then trying to get her, it's going to be really hard for you to do that. You also project neediness, so you don't want to do that. The super connectors, the target gatherers. You're not going to like this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Put yourself in a new and scary situation, often, and then make it comfortable for you. That was you, right, Matt?
I don't know.
Can't tell? It's okay, but you're at the top at least, so keep that in mind. So your major weakness is going to be sameness. I was talking to Nick in the back during this exercise we just had. If you're a difference person, the next time you go out, if you stop for a second and you go, wait a second, how are all these women the same? And you do that one time, you'll get a massive insight. A massive insight. You'll go, oh my God, all these women have vaginas. No, I'm just kidding. You can't really prove that. But you will find out some massive insight about women in general, or at least the environment in which you're in, women in that environment in general. That's really, really important. So instead of always focusing on the difference between this one and this one and this one, which you want to do because that's your natural strength, but every once in a while stop and go, how are they all the same? If you look back on your relationships, have you done this ever?
Well, you know what I think? Like, I've changed a lot in the last year.
Mhm.
So I feel like I'm doing those things, like going into unfamiliar situations, trying to feel comfortable, and then also looking at everyone as the same. So now I feel like I'm comfortable doing that.
Mhm.
Maybe I was probably that way before. I was probably more
Well, the interesting thing is that was the path you chose in order to improve yourself, because that's what you had to do, because that was your opposite.
put
So
myself on confused.
exactly. So you're already doing the thing that I'm telling you to do naturally. Because that's what you do to improve yourself. Because what you did is you said, how am I different than before?
Whatever I was doing before wasn't working.
Exactly. So you're naturally, and this will happen naturally, you're naturally going, okay, well, I need to figure this stuff out. I need to put myself in uncomfortable situations, and I need to look at how everybody's the same. That's perfect. That's what you're doing, because your body says, I grow more whenever I do this. And there's a reason why your body says that. Your body says that because, wait, which one were you? Put yourself in uncomfortable situations? Your body said that you needed this one.
Yeah.
Super skilled. And this one was like, I can connect. I can do that. I got it. I can do this.
Going after
It's going on the other side. So you're naturally going over here, right? We are all drawn to that side that we don't have, So you probably are on the side more. I mean, again, this is just a chart for now. Eventually you want to be where you can zoom out of this and you can say, what situation am I in? I'm in a loud bar with a bunch of different people. Boom. You want to be able to be bam, 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 whenever you want to. And the goal eventually becomes not to strengthen the one quadrant in which you exist naturally, but to use your own lubrication, if you will, your own grease, in order to change gears faster from one quadrant to the next. You want to be able to jump from one to the other and use the tools that you get from each one of these to handle each situation individually. It's not about which one you identify with. It never is which one you identify with. If you feel good, like you feel, who feels like, yeah, man, that's me. I do too. That's my natural thought process. I'm a super learner. Yeah, that's obviously the best one. No, it's not the best one. That thought process that, yeah, it's obviously the best one, is what keeps you there and doesn't allow you to grow in any other way. So the important thing is to recognize where you're strong, move on, and focus on where you're weak. That's a really good insight, though. That shows you that you have a natural ability to grow your weaknesses. You probably do it in other areas of your life, too, I'm assuming. So, moving on. If you are a numbers hunter, you're super skilled. Again, you want to focus on what makes women specific and different when you go out. How is she different than her? How is she different than her? How is this one different than the last person I talked to? How are they individual? What makes them unique? It's very important. And try to build that rapport with them specifically on that topic, that thing that makes them different. And the censors in the room, who's the censor? Raise your hand. Just Kevin? All right, great. Well, then never mind. Oh, forget it. I'm not going to give anybody help then. If you're a censor and you want to talk about something that makes them unique and different, your natural go-to is going to be to go, well, you are very short. She's going to be like, what? What do you mean I'm very short? No, that's a good thing. I mean, you're not all tall and gangly. Like, no, that's not what I meant. It's going to be the natural go-to for you when you talk to girls and trying to build rapport. So you want to make sure you keep in mind that some women don't speak like this. We're going to go into communication styles on the 4th day. You're going to be able to tell how they talk then, or maybe on the 3rd day. I can't remember which one.
Not a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah. When you meet another censor, you're all,
Yeah.
What do you mean? And you're like, what I think it is.
What I mean is, well, the communication disconnect usually happens from...
We're going to have a fight.
Yeah, exactly. And you're probably going to win. The communication disconnect usually happens between censors and intuitors. So an intuitor will be like, so here's something I learned from a guy who owns a website called personalityhackers.com. Personality Hackers is a company that basically types your personality. And the guy who runs that company, his name's Cameron, and he was talking about a concept like this, and I've been studying with him for the past week and a half. And he was kind of saying that what perceivers or intuitors do is they say, so, have you heard of Betsy the cow? And censors will go, no. What's Betsy the cow? Who's Betsy the cow? And then perceivers get more vague. We go, oh, she's a cow. And then the censor's like, what do you mean? Well, what's a cow? And we get more vague. It's this animal with 4 legs. And why do we keep getting more vague? Why do we keep doing that? Because we're perceivers. And we think, oh, obviously you don't get the big picture. That's what we keep thinking. You obviously don't get the big picture. But you don't care about the big picture. You want to know what Betsy the cow is. And that's where the disconnect happens. What's that? You're a censor type. That's so funny. What's that? Oh, right. Sorry. I thought you had a question, Nick. Cool. So basically what happens is censors want to know specifics. They want to point at things. Instead of a perceiver like me, I want to go Betsy the cow, and I get more vague whenever I start talking about Betsy the cow. Betsy the cow, and then Kevin would say, who's Betsy the cow? And I would go, Betsy the cow's a cow. And you go, what's a cow? So basically, perceivers, when they try to explain things, they get more and more vague instead of getting more specific.
You mean intuitive?
Sorry, yeah, intuitive people. Yeah, thank you. They get more and more vague instead of getting more specific. Censors want to be more specific. So if I was talking to you and I said, well, the reason why that didn't compute at all for you is because you're a censor. You're like, what? I can't even at that level, you can't, which is why we have a communication issue sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
I'm not specific. You know what you need me to do? Is you need me to go, hold on, let me pull out a picture of Betsy the cow and show you this is Betsy the cow. That's more specific. This is Betsy the cow, and you're like, oh, that's Betsy the cow. I understand who Betsy the cow is. And that's what you want. That's what censors want. If you're talking to a woman, if you're talking to anyone, really, 75% of the world are censors. They want to know what Betsy the cow looks like. Not that Betsy the cow is an animal with 4 legs. They don't care. They're not intuitors. You're an intuitor. They're probably not an intuitor. If you look back on your relationships, the ones that didn't have communication problems, guess what? They were all intuitors. If you're an intuitor. And for the censors, they were all censors.